Hello?
We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Again, we're going to be covering self-evaluation with security. And hopefully you're in the right place. And hopefully you're ready to talk a little bit and discuss this. It should be a great discussion. Especially you, Ron. I'm sure glad you showed up. Alan, what are you doing clear back there? Come on up. All right, we're going to get started. I know it's just a minute or two before 11, but we need to get started and get going so we can get people out to lunch a little early. So first and foremost, this is the presentation on using security self-assessment surveys to determine training needs. The idea is building some surveys and letting folks take those surveys and collecting data. And we want to talk a little bit about this process that we started in the southwest part of the state. SEDC, the Regional Service Center, spent some time working with UEN, with some folks from USBE, and others around the state to develop these surveys. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the process that we went through, and really want to have a discussion on if this is a meaningful process, if this is meaningful, these tools that we've been able to develop, and think through it with the group. We really do want your feedback and your thoughts, and so we're going to be talking about that at the end a little bit and having a pretty good discussion that way. Go to the next slide. Okay, so who we are. Hello, guys. Derek, you want to introduce yourself really quick?
My name is Derek Larson. I have 8 years experience as a classroom teacher, and as of August 1, I took the role as Educational Technology Director for Southwest Educational Development Center, or SEDC, in the southwest part of the state. We're a regional service center that we work with 6 school districts down to that end of the state that are all most of them are quite rural, as well as we have 7 charter schools we're also working with. We act, in a sense, as a technology department for some of these smaller districts that may not have the manpower that larger districts up north may have. So we work in many, many areas within these districts, working with professional development, hosting servers that can handle all kinds of different software and needs of these different school districts.
Jack, you're up.
My name's Jack Erickson. I spent the last 17 years working with Southwest Education Development Center. I was the technical person there. I've now moved to Technical College as their IT director, and spent a lot of years working with Cory and trying to develop some surveys to improve security in education. That seems to be a real weak spot in that realm, probably in all realms, but especially in education. So I think that's why we're primarily here today.
Thanks, guys. My name's Cory Stokes, and I too had worked at SEDC for 20 plus years, doing the technology role there, and spent a lot of time working with technology directors. And we've always had security issues, but they've really become prevalent over the last few years. And we decided to start thinking through this and doing something about it. I am now currently with Utah Education Network, or should I say UETN, better be correct in this particular presentation. I am working as a project manager with Jeff Egley, Jim Stewart, and several other folks at UEN, and enjoy my job there. But we committed to doing this presentation before I left SEDC. And so that's why we're all here. That's why we're putting this thing together. We really do need to think through this. Slide. So let's talk a little bit about why this came to be. As the tech director at SEDC, I spent a lot of time with the board, the SEDC board. The SEDC board is made up of the 6 superintendents of the school districts in the area. They have a few other people as well, a person from the university, as well as the Board of Education. But every month we met together and spent time working on technology, projects, and goals. But one particular meeting, it was a couple of years ago, one of the superintendents had been watching the news and I think came across the newscast on Target being hacked and being breached and all those credit cards being sent out. And so he brought up the question of, are we secure? And he asked right in board meeting, is our data, our students' data, our faculty data, is it secure? And it kind of threw me for a loop. Are you secure? Is that a fair question to ask? And I kind of fumbled a little bit and said, I think we are. we try to be secure. We try our best. We have an amazing security person in Jack, who was at SCDC at the time, and he's doing a great job patching and doing all the things that security folks do. But are we secure? And they kept asking me that, and I kept saying, well, I think what we're doing the best we possibly can. And I think that's where we're at, right? I think that's how we can answer it. Boy, given that question again in a board meeting, I think I would have a lot different answer. So yeah, we can be secure, or we can at least get more secure if we had more resources. And I think that's one of the things that we really fight with in K-12. There's just not enough people, there's not enough resources, not enough money to throw at the security issues that we have. So I took this question back from the superintendent's meeting to the tech directors in the region, and we worked together with the tech directors quite closely in a group called the SWAT, the Southwest Area Technology Team. And we work hand in hand. We talk about things, we work on projects, we work on solutions and helping the districts. And we started to talk about what is it and how can we better answer this question, are we secure? And we fought with this idea. We said we could bring back the security folks from UEN and have them do the security audit. How many have gone through a security audit from UEN? A few hands, yeah. Each one of our districts in the Southwest area went through the security audit several years ago. And it wasn't all that successful, was it, Jack? I mean, we found out a lot of good information, but we also really hurt a lot of people's feelings when we brought in these experts to say, hey, here's your holes. Here's the issues that you have. And we didn't really feel like that was the right approach. So we started talking about this idea of building a self-assessment tool where everybody in K-12 goes through this and answers questions, and then we report on where we're at. And that's how this particular project came to be. And we started working on it. It took us about a year through this process. I'm going to let Jack talk to you a little bit about the process and maybe have some questions for you.
Okay. I guess where we started, being in the educational realm, we tried to develop a rubric that would lead us to the answers that, well, to the questions that we could ask our end users, what their problems were, where they stood security-wise. What we learned early on was developing rubrics were a lot tougher than we had anticipated. So having said that, we immediately stepped forward and moved to the Bible of security, which everybody's aware of. We went to the SANS 20. And out of the SANS 20, we found that out of the 20 disciplines, each one of those had multiple disciplines underneath it. So we took that, and since it was so complex and intimidating to the end users, we tried to rewrite that information and make it in a more readable format for them so that they would be able to understand and perhaps provide us the answers that we needed to help answer the superintendent's questions, are we secure? That turned out much tougher than we thought also. So we broke it down into 3 different segments because we found out we had different levels of users. We modified it a little bit. We found out that we had the administrative staff who thought they knew everything and knew nothing. We thought we had the teachers who knew they didn't know anything and didn't have time to learn. And then we had the technical staff that, because it was education, probably were not as technically savvy as they perhaps should have been. So from there, we wrote and pointed the questions specifically to those 3 individual groups. Then we sent it out and we started to refine the survey. We took it around to the different school districts and we started issuing it out. The surveys initially were way too long because we tried to include all 20 of the SANS disciplines, and they were much longer than they needed to be. Nobody wanted to take the...
Jack, about 300 questions
I
per survey?
think between the 3 of them, there's probably 300 questions. I think the bulk of the people initially wouldn't even complete the survey. So we went back to the drawing board, we rewrote the questions again, we remodified the questions again, and sent them back out for another trial, and we went through this process multiple times. At the end of that, I think we've got a fair survey at this point. I don't think it's necessarily where we exactly would like it to be right now. I think it still needs some development, but that's where we are today.
By the way, the previous slide had the links to the surveys. You're more welcome to take a look at it. We've got backups of it. It's okay, whatever you need to do. But we will ask for your feedback here as we get closer to the end. So the question is what were we looking for from the end users, right? The teachers, per se, the people that are using the technology? Well, I think when you go through the questions, you'll see kind of what we're looking for in those type of questions. But we think a lot of the issues, a lot of the concerns we have with security is with just basic password management and different things that happen where a teacher is sitting at a computer in their SIS system and gets up, walks away, goes out of the classroom, and somebody can sit down to that computer and have access to it. Those type of things. We're trying to find out those type of things as well. Do you want to answer that a little bit better? Is there any other feedback on that at all? I think we went through the SANS, and we're trying to collect that information through the SANS process. I think it's a very valid question that you have, but we're looking at the basic level of the SANS 20 critical skills. Go ahead. In the Southwest region, we have over 100 schools, and really we didn't involve a lot of the Washington County schools, so it was everybody else besides Washington County. So we were looking at probably 60 schools or so. And we're going to show a little bit of the data, and we're going to provide some of the responses. But it was a lot with the teachers and administrators and even the technical folks in some cases in some of those districts.
Okay, so
Doug, did that answer your question? As we start to go through this, I think it'll make more sense. So.
Yeah, and as you go through and check out these links that we've included, that's a great way to see the exact surveys. And they're in a format that you could take and you can kind of look over. A couple of things. So a better answer to your question there on the near the front. We had 446 respondents of teachers, and that was broken down into 17 elementary schools participated, 14 secondary schools, and we had 2 charter schools. Now that is not by any means our entire region. Like we said, we have 6 districts, and we have close to 130 buildings in our region. So 17 elementary schools and 14 secondary and 2 charter, that's not a large enough sample size by any means. But this is what was able to come in, just to give you an idea of where the responses are coming from, okay? With the teacher responses, we went through, and one of our guys on the team, like I said, I'm brand new to this process. I kind of walked in on this. I kind of replaced Cory as he took off and moved over to UETN. So I came in kind of looking over the results, not really having the whole process. So one of our other team members, A couple of them went through and kind of compiled all the results into a couple of key recommendations for each area. But teacher recommendations were broken down into these three main categories: updated software, backups, and security issues, including password use, email scams, and malware and ransomware. That last section is pretty crazy because we've had one of our districts has had a couple of machines hit pretty harshly with ransomware, and they've basically had to just forego the machines. And so this is something that's continuing to be discussed. So I just kind of pulled a couple of charts that I thought were very interesting along with updated software. So the orange color, because I like to try to you remember I come from a teaching background, I try to keep it color coordinated of some sense.
It's Halloween, right?
It's also Halloween, right? So there's our color scheme. Deep inside, I'm a Halloween lover.
And Saintcon.
Look at that. We've fit it all in, not even planning, but it worked perfectly. Anytime you see orange, that's going to be a positive response of yes. The black is going to be a no, and a gray will be the response of not sure. So computer updates are applied. You can see more than half of the teachers responded that yes, their updates are being applied, but they still have a quarter that are not even updating. You know, and having worked in a school for 8 years, I was the pseudo-tech person for the building. That was a question I constantly get asked. Can I update that coffee app that keeps popping up, that like coffee cup Java thing? Can I do that? And yes, you might have to do the Java update. Okay, what about this other thing? You know, and these kind of simple things that I think some of us think, okay, that's so basic. Why wouldn't you do that? Some of these teachers, they're just so darn scared and nervous they're going to blow something up. I think some of them literally think they push the wrong button, the building will blow up. And that's kind of what we're looking at with some of these teachers specifically. And if you know a teacher, you may be nodding your head saying, yeah, I can see some of that. I had a number of stories that I won't go into. What I thought was interesting, though, is the security patches. When they were asked specifically about security patches, almost half of teachers responded that no, these were not being updated. So they don't actually know that information, I don't think, because that's something that's not necessarily happening on their end. But from what they can understand, just no, it's not happening. So it's a matter of looking at it and saying, and then you have almost a third of the respondents saying, I don't know.
I think that's the most alarming right here. Almost 40% of the people saying, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, and that's quite a scary piece there. And we're trying to find ways we can help these educators. They don't have to all be computer geniuses by any means, but we want them to have some of those basic skills. A couple others. Backups was another major concern. This was quite interesting for me to see that about half of the respondents said yes, they have a regular backup that is performed. I think that is entirely off, because in my building of 30 teachers, I was probably one of 2 in the building that was backing up on a regular basis. So I actually wonder how accurate that response is, with saying about half of them are saying yes and a little under half saying no. But what I thought was really interesting is, are they testing those supposed backups? Almost 3/4 said, no, we're not testing. What do you mean testing backup? You can test a backup? So something that's interesting, they may not even understand what's going on here. And in this area, we're looking at, we included Dropbox, Google Drive, Carbonite, some of these different services. And so I'm not sure if they fully understood that question, which is kind of scary. Many of you probably understand exactly what's going to happen and how often drives fail. And we always try to tell teachers that it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when and how often they will fail, right? And that's something that we're trying to really push with our teachers in our region, is that this is a major deal, and especially with our district office personnel. So with security issues, passwords are getting a big piece. Of the people saying they don't use simple passwords, like 80% are saying, no, we don't use simple passwords. Now, again, I wonder how accurate that is. Did they understand the question properly? Because I've seen some of these passwords, and it's like a dog's name, a kid's name, a birthday. But the thing that's more alarming to me is how often are they changing their passwords. Notice that right there. Close to 61% are not regularly changing passwords. Now, what is that regularly defined as? It's kind of open-ended. And so many teachers will set their password unless their district automatically is forcing them to reset the password. It doesn't happen. I had same building for 8 years. I could sit down at certain teachers' computers and I knew their password without even knowing their password. Like I have the memory of a goldfish, and yet I could still walk into many of their rooms and get into all of their stuff doing proper, obviously always proper things. I'm not a devious person by any means. Plus, I have enough crap on my own. I don't need their crap, their teacher crap, right? So it was very interesting how sad this piece is. But this was even more alarming. How often do they feel like they are trained in password management? Is that 95%? Almost saying that no, they are not. They don't feel like they are trained in password management. They have no clue what that means. You know, and that's looking at, have you heard of tools like LastPass, like 1Password, some of these other KeyPass, these different tools? Have you heard of them? How are you managing your passwords more than just a sticky note on your computer? And again, you walk in any classroom, almost any classroom across the country, you're going to find a sticky note somewhere near the computer with 1 or 2 passwords that are used everywhere.
That doesn't happen in Emory, right, Doug?
No. Never. Unique passwords, though. I thought this was interesting. Close to 60% are saying, yes, they have unique passwords. What does that mean? Is that like 2 passwords that they're using over and over, back and forth? So it's unique because it kind of changes a little bit? Or are they using what's more secure and you're having a different password for every service you use? And I kind of have to wonder how accurate that number is, especially if they're not using password management. How are they managing a different password for every site? Just my teacher-related sites, I had close to 60 sites that I was logging into between different apps and different tools and different district-mandated sites. There's no way I could have a secure password for each one and not use a management tool. So I don't know how they're pulling that off. Maybe their memories are really great, or they have a whole ton of sticky notes around the room. So, security issues, security breach. So again, the question was posed: do you know what's going to happen? Do you know what to do if you have a security breach? If you have some kind of a malware, some kind of malware, some kind of ransomware, and about half of the respondents said they have no idea what to do. And then, again, more than half, close to 60%, saying they've had 0 training on what to do in that case. This is scary stuff.
This is specifically teachers.
This is classroom teachers. This is not district office. This is not technical people. This is the classroom teachers. And this is incredibly scary that there's 0 training there. Okay? So any questions with the teachers? These were kind of some of the main ones that I came across. Like I said, some of the key areas that we thought were very important. Okay? And along with the administrators. So this I thought was quite alarming. You remember the numbers we had for elementary, right? For the teachers themselves, 19 responses compared to, what did we say, 4 something for teachers? 19 administrators responded. Now I get there are less administrators than there are teachers in the districts, but still, that's pretty sad because I know we have more than 19 buildings. 10 of them were elementary, 7 were secondary, and again, 2 charters. So that's almost more scary to me. Just that they wouldn't even respond, you know, and that's one of the flaws of a self-assessment. We looked at 3 recommendations for them, you know, and one of them was straight up: remind your teachers to back up. You know, make sure you are backing up as an administrator, but also remind your teachers to be backing up. And then also encryption. You know, how often do teachers' machines have access to or information stored on that is very much private and very much needs to be kept secret based on COPA and HIPAA and FERPA and all these different, you know, alphabet soup laws, right? How often do we have these things that are there and yet they're not? Are they encrypted? You know, and then the other key is security issues. Are you working with your teachers to make sure they're fully trained? If you go back to the first slide that I had and you click on that, you'll have a Google Doc that'll have all of the pieces listed out in full detail. But these are a couple of areas that we felt were very, very concerning, looking at administrators and teachers.
Right. Good overview of the data. So the very first question we want to ask in the discussion, to begin this discussion, I think this is the most important part of the presentation, is this dialogue that we're going to have, is, are these type of self-evaluations meaningful, valuable?
And I don't know. My name's James. I'm actually from your neck of the woods. I'm with the city of St. George. I mean, I don't want to start off too critical, but that seemed like a lot of a lot of questions, and I think the reason I asked, how many responses were you getting back was because I'm wondering if you were to cut back on the questions and just try and get samples from people, you might get more responses and still be able to cover just as much ground.
Remember, this is just a pilot. It's just a pilot. We
Sure,
trying to
sure,
get
right.
everybody responding. We're trying to get samples. And I think we got a pretty good sample. We've got a lot of the feedback.
You're right.
I think it's a really valid point, okay? First of all, I think our surveys are a little long, right? I think there's some issues. I think probably the point that I wanted to make is we weren't trying to get 100% attendance on this, response. We were trying to do a pilot. We're trying to collect information. We're trying to get enough information to say, is this valuable? But my question's a little different than that. My question is, just in general, are these type of surveys, these type of data collection tools valuable? We'll go right here first.
My name is Gary Arnell. I'm the CTO for a small private school based in St. George. It's an online school. I think this is invaluable because it provides visibility into an area of the organization that most leadership will assume is fine. My CEO, for example, he doesn't know what all the risks are. He doesn't know who all the players are, what all the issues are with security. And this puts a face, or puts a face on it. It opens that black box to show, just in a quick way, here's all of the, here's what all the risks are. Which ones do we have resources to address? Which ones are we going to address, and in what order? And just to be aware, so that when something happens, it's not like, what? There's not a big question like, how did this happen? It's that they know from the beginning that this is a long-term approach.
Good feedback. I do think that one of the reasons we did this is that awareness. People sit down and go through this survey, and they say, oh, wait, there is password issues in Arkansas. Both great comments, excellent comments and thoughts. Come back here, and then we'll bring you back here. Is that Jared? It is.
You mentioned next steps. I guess if you use the survey as kind of a choose your own adventure or choose your own training path, and then develop modules that the teachers can then go into and be like, oh, I need to learn more about password management, and then work through it. Yeah. So choose your own adventure and training. It decreases the total amount of training you need to do, and it specializes on what the teachers want to learn about. Yes, and I'm interested in the questions you're asking to take back.
Say something smart, Jared. Smart.
Now you put me on the spot. I guess the biggest value that I'm seeing from something like this is just giving the people a chance to do their own kind of a self-assessment, to look at it and say, oh, it matters that I change my password once in a while. I shouldn't be using the same password for everything. I could ask for training on this. I get the sense that maybe in some cases we have people who don't even know what they don't know. And when we ask them, do you know about this? Then they say, oh, I could know about this, couldn't I? And it at least creates an awareness and a desire to know more.
Does this information surprise any of you? Some of I mean, again, it's not a massive amount of responses, but I think a number of you have said that you felt like it was worthwhile. Does it surprise you what you're seeing? I mean, think about the teachers you know, your children's teachers, the teachers that are in your neighborhood, people you might know. Does this kind of information surprise you? Or does it seem about on par? And that's what scares me as a teacher, because I don't think I would have responded, and I think I would have responded quite differently than what a lot of these majorities were showing. But maybe that's because I'm a nerd at heart, and so I kind of love getting into this kind of stuff, and I present at conferences on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the surveys are valuable. Chris Mather.
surveys are valuable, and I think not just for the admins, but he stole mine as like the people taking it. They're like, oh, is that important? What does that mean? Those things, it gives them an awareness of, oh, this is something I should be thinking of. Please tell me about it. Give me training.
Great insight. So I think there is some value in it. Robert, you're up. So the question is what's improved since the survey? And I think that's a very valid question. We're still collecting data. We're still working on it. We've put together, I think SEDC started to put together a game plan, a professional development plan to help in this area. But I don't know if that's been implemented. Derek, you can talk to that.
Cory, I think some of the districts, like Washington, some of the others have actually started to develop some technical training in this area to help them. One other item you should be aware of, what actually led somewhat to this is we actually went on site and did some physical on-site assessments. Found out early on that the easiest link, as we all know, is end users. Social engineering, it was really simple to get anything we needed to know in the educational realm. And that in itself is ultimately scary. There was no contest whatsoever. So the physical awareness and mental awareness of the security became an extremely important part of what we were trying to accomplish with these surveys.
Speak loud. So the question was, did it open up communication between the people taking the survey and those of us that are providing the professional development? Absolutely. I think that's a really big plus.
So you asked, what is SCDC doing right now? What are their game plans? So these recommendations were literally just created this summer, and we just barely shared at our last month's board meeting in September with the superintendents our recommendations. We shared that document with them. They all had a copy of that. And one of the things that we do is as we get ready for our trainings, we go and we visit every single superintendent in their home district. We go and talk with every technology director for the district, and then we get out to every single building and talk to that building administrator and basically go over what are your needs you see for your building for the year so we can plan training, as well as here are some needs that your superintendent has, here are needs that your technology director has, here are some needs that we found in security risks. And so as I went with one of our trainers, Clint Stevens, we went and we visited all of the administrators in Beaver and Garfield and Kane and Millard, excuse me. We visited with four of our six. We've been to every single principal, and we've brought up these things. These are some trainings that we are looking at doing, and so it's just a matter of we're trying to find what's going to work best for them to fit it in where it can go, and we can have the most effect. It is. I do agree with the comment in the back that a choose your own adventure, menu selection. I think that's a great way to go, and let them kind of go through the steps. And that's something that I'm going to propose that we work on as a service center.
So we've given you links to the surveys. Anybody had a chance to log in and look at those, connect? Any feedback on that? So we've talked about this in general sense, right? This probably makes sense that we try to do something like this. We get that feedback. We provide that awareness. Now let's talk specifically about this survey here and some of the issues and some of the good things, I guess, if there are a few. So Robert, you had a chance to look at it. What was your thoughts? Robert doesn't have any thoughts.
This survey may actually be the most valuable thing I take away from Saintcon, just because what you do is so similar to what I do. I need to do this exact thing with our staff and faculty. So I really appreciate having that. One of the biggest challenges that I face in my role is that this is not really a value add to what our business does. It's really insurance against problems that could theoretically occur. And so gathering this kind of information and seeing what's online, if you go to the informationisbeautiful.net site and look at the world's biggest data breaches and how it has just ballooned in the last 15 years, that kind of information, and taking it to people who don't ever think about this, it's just not on their radar, not to their fault, it's just that's not what they're paid to do. And so having this kind of information and being able to put it in these kind of layman terms is really, really helpful.
I think you're absolutely correct. Teachers are looking at 30, 40 kids all day long. The last thing they're really worried about is their password, right? They've got lots of issues, lots of concerns, and so I think it does open that up.
Todd Hadley. I used to work for education. I moved into a slightly different industry, and I think one of the things that is missing from the education environment, at least when I worked there, was an understanding of two things. The first being, how big of a deal is this? What are the ramifications of a breach? Currently, where I work today, if your password is found on a sticky note, that's grounds for termination. You are escorted out of the building. You're done. And one of the main reasons why that is because we have regulatory agencies that if I don't do that, well, then the whole company will be shut down and we'll be out of business tomorrow. But if I think if we can get our users, and I think this survey does a good job of making them aware of, number one, hey, this can be a big deal, and number two, one of our biggest frustrations as security people is no matter how much I do, when I worked for the IT department, the comment I got all the time is, hey, I don't need to worry about this. That's IT's problem. And no matter what IT does, if their password's on a sticky note, the most expensive security system in the world just got thwarted.
Good comments, Todd. Good to see you again. So, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So, let me ask you a direct question. Is the survey too long? Are these surveys too long? Is there too many questions here? Those of you that looked at it.
Am I going slow enough so you guys can kind of glance at what it's saying, or am I driving you all nuts? Okay. I'm trying to go nice and slow, let you read a little bit.
I think the feedback we got from those people that are taking it, they were saying that it's probably a little too long, a little too much information. We ought to probably break it up a little bit. I just wanted to get your feedback and your thoughts on it. You can speak loud. You can raise your hand. I can bring you the mic, too. So, what do you think, Guy? I can't believe I'm asking Guy to make a comment this close to lunch.
Well, I don't have access to the documents, of course, so I haven't been able to run through them. Cory invited me here. I'm not saintly this week. I have a couple of genuine Utah Saint T-shirts and that. I've been around a while, but it's an interesting subject to me because I brought up a similar topic in our regional technology meetings a couple of months ago when we were. I've been. I don't know whether the right word is pressured, but pushed by my superintendent to have a UEN audit come in, and I know there's a significant wait time to doing that. I'm not sure that he understands what it's about, but I'm not in a position to really argue. So I brought up the topic in our regional meeting and said, why don't we think about designing our own self-service security audit, or one where we would work cooperatively together. So I have a lot of interest in the topic. I'm not, without seeing the documents, I'm not sure how adaptable they would be to what we want to do, but probably would be. Is there something else you wanted to ask?
I think Guy Durant is the tech director for Daggett School District, and I appreciate him being here and provide some insight and his thoughts on this. I can tell you there's some bad questions in here. As we went through this and we gathered feedback from teachers, there was lots of questions, double negatives. I had to sit back and say, how did we write that question? It makes no sense to me now. Yeah, exactly.
Those kinds of things can be overcome fairly.
Yeah, I think there is some.
Are you asking the right question?
Yeah.
Not you have a copy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think we can fix those easy. The grammar type issues are easy to fix. And because they're aligned to the SANS 20, I think we're asking the right questions, but that's another question I want to find out probably is, are the questions that are in here appropriate? Our thinking is we want people to look at this. We want people to go through this. We want them to vet it with this group here, to think through this, to get your feedback, to help to develop this, to help refine this, and possibly even move it outside of the SEDC region. I mean, I think it's all available. Jared. Good point. We need to make a note of that. If we can automate it and help them with that, it would sure be to their advantage and to ours, right? Make sure that it gets done. And
Can I ask a question on that, though? Whenever you hear that word automation, oftentimes it means a little bit more of this, right? In some of those areas. Is that feasible, do you think, in the current educational funding state? I know that's something that some of our districts have looked into, getting an automatic backup plan, crash plan, carbonite, whatever it may be, and it would cost them multiple thousands of dollars a year on top of what they're already spending to make even just that one piece work. And so
I think you're right.
I agree.
I think you're absolutely correct.
So you said, so what the comment was said, that it's not just a matter of the hardware, sometimes it's the time as well involved. Is that correct? So if you already have the time, you don't need the if you already have the hardware, you don't need to do that so much as the time to do the piece. So the organizational policy, making sure it's set where it should be, as opposed to where it may not even be thought of yet or placed. Okay.
Great discussion. So we can have all the comments we want. I mean, we can still go clear up till noon, I guess. We don't have to do that, though. I mean, I think it's always good to let people out early. But my last question that I have for the group is, who would be interested in working throughout the state on something like this to refine the tools that we have and help develop a more meaningful survey? If you'll raise your hand and let me know, because send me an email and we'll get you on a list. We'll start working on this a little bit if there's interest in doing this. I think that's what we want to find out. We have some work to do here. We know that. We put together a pretty good effort, but we've gotten a little bit of a hurry. We got some good feedback from those folks that took the survey, but we want some help in developing this. We want some help in pushing this forward in other areas and in districts. Yes, back here. Yes. Absolutely. We'll update the presentation. This presentation has a lot more slides in it too.
So what I'd recommend instead is that short link right there, that bit.ly link. That is the link to a viewable copy of this exact presentation with all the links going out. I would just grab that copy of that, and then you have the most current piece. No need to download anything. You just have to go to that short link, and then you have access to all the pieces. And we'll make sure that on our end, all of the links are not going to require any kind of a login, because sometimes that does happen. And so I think somebody was saying they didn't have access to it. So we'll make sure that that's not the case. But that bit.ly / SEASAT-Saintcon, and that is caps lock, or caps specific, obviously, for bit.ly, for short links. So that'll get you right to this exact presentation. No need to download anything.
You have our email addresses. Put that up on the slide as well, Derek.
You guys all have this screen? If I turn it?
We'll give it a second.
Give it another 30 seconds or so. Yeah, question back.
We've
So
had some
the
people.
question is, has UEN reacted to what we've done?
Yeah, thank you. We've had a few people from UEN on the committee and have worked on it. Kelly's one of them, and I think he supports it, kind of. And I'm from UEN, so I think that there's some discussion there too, absolutely.
So-
I think that we need to involve UEN as we continue to develop this, absolutely.
So here's our email addresses right here. Feel free to contact Cory right there if you're interested.
Cool. We could actually use Weber State or any other university for a capstone project to build some of these modules for training. Great idea. Great idea. Thanks for the input. And those are the type of things we need to, I mean, we came here for, is to start thinking about and working that way on. So. What else, guys? What other thoughts? Any other input? Any other comments, questions? What we did is we provided door prizes. We came in and provided a half-hour training session for them and provided door prizes for those that came and completed the survey, or their names in a drawing for a door prize.
We also, if you'll notice, we did not collect names of those that took the survey. That was very intimidating. We found that early on. They didn't want to be isolated out. They thought it would affect their jobs. We had some secretaries actually in tears, thought if they failed, they were going to lose their employment. So we pulled that away and said, no, we'll make this anonymous.
Yeah, Cory and the rest of you, I have a question for you, and that is, what are you doing with the data in terms of data analytics once you have it, and do you have any envision of running it through some sort of a mill that would create a prescriptive set of recommendations? I realize that takes it a lot further than where you are at present, because right now that would be basically a manual process of, okay, I'm going to look at the data and find out where my holes are, but you know, would there be some way of running it through any sort of an automated process that would come up and flag different responses as being problematic?
Our automatic responses, our automated process was Scott Harvester and Clint Stevens. Those were our two automated processes there. They went through with the fine-tooth comb and went with it.
And I think probably with the comment from this guy back here, we could almost, or we could possibly have a university class take this and do some of that development, developing some of those analytics to provide that information. It would be kind of interesting to.
Certainly, I could go through on my own and look at my data, maybe Mark and I go through it together, but that can be fairly time-consuming. Some sort of pre-filtering.
The charts that Derek showed came directly from Google Drive. I mean, it came from there. And that's kind of a nice way to look at things. But I think there's more to it than that. I think we could possibly develop it to a higher level. And I think that's what you're talking about. What other thoughts, guys? Like I said, I don't mind getting out early. I think it's a great idea always to get out early.
Survey about the survey.
Okay. Send me an email, and I'll work with Derek and Jack, and we'll continue to press forward with this if you're interested.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate you coming.